So there's been a ton of absolutely terrible vehicles added to GTA Online over the years. Some have awful handling or performance, others lack customization, and a few are just flat out poorly designed or buggy. But there's really one car that trumps the rest, not because it's outright terrible, but because it's extremely confusing due to how Rockstar handled the release of all of its variations. Enter the Declasse Walton L35. Now you guys might recognize this truck from my corner of the GTA Online space because there is, or at least was, a drift variant of it, and it's one I've spoken very highly of in recent videos. But after seeing some comments asking where the drift version can actually be found and purchased, I decided to dig deeper into the Walton L35 as a whole, and the more I looked into it, the more obvious it became that this truck is one of the most confusing vehicles Rockstar has ever added to GTA Online, and today I want to unpack why. To start this little saga off, we're going to rewind back to June of 2023 when the original Declasse Walton L35 released as part of the San Andreas Mercenaries DLC. By all measures, the Walton L35 was a good vehicle. It was based off of a lifted Chevy S10, so it already looked pretty cool, and it also had decent performance and customization to back it up. While it was sort of an obscure vehicle and not high on the list of off-road vehicles we wanted Rockstar to add to GTA Online, it was received decently well by the community. It wasn't the best, it also wasn't the worst, just another run-of-the-mill mid-DLC vehicle. Fast forward to the end of June 2025 when Rockstar released a new, with huge air quotes, version of the Walton L35, the Walton L35 Stock. By all accounts, this vehicle was a complete failure by Rockstar because it was basically a lazy copy-paste job. The only big change that Rockstar made was removing the large off-road tires and lowering the truck to its stock height, and they actually decided to keep the all-wheel drive drivetrain as well, although a similar base model truck would likely only be rear-wheel drive, so it didn't feel as realistic. But the real kicker was that the stock Walton L35 had absolutely no new customization, with all options being copied over from the original Walton L35. And given that many of these mods were designed to play into the lifted off-road vibe of the original Walton, virtually none of the copied customization looked right on the stock version, beyond a few of the liveries. And a couple months later, in August of 2025, Rockstar decided to one-up themselves yet again by adding the Drift Walton L35, which was actually the last drip feed vehicle to come alongside the other drift tuning cars that came with the Money Fronts DLC. On the surface, everything related to this newest drift version was great. On its own, it was an amazing drift car and easily one of the better drift tuned vehicles we had gotten, plus it was free for the drift themed event weeks following its release. But there were a couple huge points of confusion about the Drift Walton L35. The first of which was that Rockstar didn't just add the drift tuning upgrade to the stock Walton like everybody was expecting they would. For whatever reason, they created an entirely separate version. Now, while every other drift tuning car up to this point had their own base version that had an optional drift tuning upgrade which could be applied to the LS car meet, the Drift Walton was a separate vehicle entirely, and this caused confusion about what versions players would need to buy. There were an initial wave of players that I know of who were buying the stock Walton L35 earlier on in the drip feed, thinking that one day the drift upgrade would be available for it, but because they didn't wait for the separate drift version to be released later on, they just ended up wasting their money. But arguably the biggest annoyance with the Drift Walton L35 was its customization, or at least the realization that all of the customization that we wanted for the stock version was now locked only to this new drift version. Rockstar added so many new cool options for fenders, spoilers, liveries, and a bunch of other aesthetic mods, which obviously took a lot of effort, but they didn't bother to make them available for the stock version of the Walton, which is the version that arguably needed it the most. Instead, as we talked about before, that variant was stuck with all the off-road style customization which was recycled and really didn't fit that truck well at all. If you were interested in doing a properly good-looking street truck type build, you can only do it with the drift version, which was really annoying because you couldn't do anything to address its slidey physics. And finally, the big nail in the coffin was the fact that after the 2-week period where Rockstar added the Drift Walton L35 for free as part of the drip feed, they quietly removed it from the game and have not added it back since for normal purchase. Although their original Newswire post about these specific event weeks did indicate that for whatever reason the Drift Walton L35 would be removed, myself and mostly everybody else just assumed that the vehicle would be only free for that period, after which it would be purchasable at its normal $1.4 million purchase price, which you can clearly see on the original listing for it, so at some point Rockstar intended for us to be able to buy this truck. But for whatever reason, despite investing resources into modeling this new variant and then marketing this version of the truck to build hype for the event weeks, Rockstar removed it for purchase for absolutely no reason and have seemingly forgotten about it as of the release of the Safe House in the Hills DLC. It's not a bug, it's not a special unlock or a platform specific thing, it's just not available for purchase across the board, despite it still being a relatively new DLC vehicle. And once again, this has increased confusion because players who heard or saw any mention of the Drift Walton L35, like in all the videos and posts on my channel, following the end of these event weeks in August of 2025, didn't know that this version was removed and couldn't be purchased normally anymore. Thus, just like around when the stock and the drift versions were announced, players were again buying the stock version that was still purchasable and thought that they could equip the drift tuning upgrade to it, when in fact they couldn't. So, just to recap all the ways Rockstar fumbled the stock and drift versions of the Walton L35. Number one, the stock version was a very lazy copy-paste job. The only change was to the wheel setup with all of the customization copied from the original Walton, therefore none of it really looked quite right on the base version. Number two was that Rockstar added the drift version of the Walton L35, which had all the customization we would have wanted on the stock version, but was now locked behind the drift variant. And number three was that the drift version of the Walton L35 was a separate purchasable vehicle entirely, not one that required drift tuning to be equipped on the stock Walton L35, which caused a bit of confusion about the version of the truck a player would need to buy. This only got worse after Rockstar quietly removed the drift version for purchase and has yet to add it back as of the release of the Safe House in the Hills DLC. Now, I know myself and probably a lot of you guys are curious why and how Rockstar could have botched the release of this vehicle so badly, and honestly I don't have a great answer. I'd really like to think it wasn't done intentionally to confuse players into spending as much money as possible, but that's not fully out of the realm of possibility, as sad as that sounds. I honestly though think the most logical reason stems from bugs in getting the drift tuning upgrade working on the stock Walton L35. Now ideally the stock version would have had all of the customization that the drift version had, minus a few exclusive liveries that would be unlocked when the drift tuning was equipped, which, as I've explained, is basically exactly what they've done for all other drift tuning cars in the past. But there had to have been an issue with the stock Walton L35's model and or its swap over to the drift version that occurred late in the development of the Money Fronts DLC, so they just opted to rush out the copy-pasted stock version and keep things separate for the drift version. We know that it's likely just a skeleton crew working on GTA 5 and GTA Online's updates now, with the bulk of the devs working to get GTA 6 out in time, hopefully without any more delays, fingers crossed. So I can understand why a relatively small issue with a vehicle like this could have slipped through the cracks initially. However, the fact that they've seemingly forgotten about adding the drift version back for normal purchase, which I thought would have been done with the Safe House in the Hills DLC, still has me really confused. Again, the Drift Walton L35 is a relatively new DLC vehicle. It's not a lesser used one, which is Rockstar's excuse for removing vehicles for purchase in the past. It's got its own new listing on Southern San Andreas Super Autos with a normal purchase price, and I'm sure there's already a ton of players waiting to spend their money or potentially buy a shark card to get it. Not only that, but Rockstar spent their own resources to develop the vehicle model and all of the other accompanying content for it, so it's baffling that they wouldn't be trying to capitalize on that as much as possible. It could be that this is a more direct FOMO marketing technique and that they're locking this car exclusively behind event weeks only to drive engagement, but I hate that this is the vehicle they decided to try that with, and I'm really hoping this doesn't become the norm for any other upcoming DLCs in GTA Online or even in GTA 6. Unfortunately, there's really not much that we can do directly to get Rockstar to go back and revert the dumb decisions that they made with the Declasse Walton L35. However, we can do smaller things like suggest that they add the Drift Walton L35 back for normal purchase using the GTA Online feedback page. I think this would be the most agreeable change for Rockstar to make because it's basically just them flipping a switch to make this vehicle purchasable again. I have linked their feedback page in the description, specifically to the forum where you can leave other suggestions pertaining to the vehicles in GTA Online. There, you can either write your own comments about the Walton L35, or you can just copy and paste my suggestion that they add the drift version back for purchase like any other normal DLC vehicle, especially given that it's a relatively recent addition. Beyond that, I really don't think Rockstar would go back to update the stock version's customization or anything else like that, because they've never done that with other cars that they've messed up really badly in the past, and this is just going to be another GTA Online car with a ton of untapped potential that's just lost to time. Now, in an attempt to end this video on a somewhat positive note, there is one big silver lining specific to acquiring the Drift Walton L35, which is that you can still buy this off of another player in the LS car meet. While it would be nice for Rockstar to just let us buy this version of the Walton like they should have done from the start, this is a workaround that does work on all platforms. Now, while I don't have a dedicated channel in my Discord server about trading and buying cars, if you join it and ask in there, I'm sure somebody is going to be able to help you out. Just make sure that you let people know what platform or version of GTA Online that you're playing on. If you also happen to catch catch one of my live streams and it's a convenient time, you can just ask me directly in the chat and I can try to get mine sold to you, so long as you're playing on the enhanced version of GTA Online on Xbox Series S or X. I'm also going to link Digital Car Addicts and HelloFlush's servers in the description, because I know both have dedicated training and buying channels where you can link up with somebody pretty quickly. Either that, or asking on the various GTA Online Discord servers and subreddits, or even in a car meet or a public lobby, should help you find somebody who's willing to sell you theirs. So that is a wrap on all versions of the Declasse Walton L35, and why I think this truck takes the cake as one of the most confusing cars in GTA Online. I know there's a bunch of other poorly made, broken, or just outright forgotten cars in GTA Online, but the Walton L35 was especially relevant to me given the confusion around the drift variant, and since not many other creators have spoke about all the issues with this vehicle, I figured I'd throw my hat in the ring. Now I know the format of this video was more in line with a serious video essay as opposed to a casual, unscripted video like I normally would have made, but to be honest, I enjoyed making this one, and I'd like to keep this scripted style up for other videos that I'm going to be working on here in the new year. I hope you guys found this video at least somewhat informative and helpful, and if you did, feel free to drop a like on it, subscribe to my channel, and also leave any of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope your 2026 is off to an amazing start, and it continues to be that way, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.